Hello everybody, and I wanted to just preface this by saying I've been posting ASMR style videos over the last couple of uploads, and I'm so grateful and appreciative that I've had lovely feedback for my voice, and I will continue to make some more videos. I'm also going to be returning to treatments soon, so I will do a couple of practice treatments before I get back into offering treatments to the public. So I'll try and maybe film a couple of those as well. But today's video, what I really wanted to do and what I've been meaning to do for a really long period of time is talk about my labour and my birth story, because I wanted to have a video document to look back on, and also I found when I was pregnant that looking at videos of people's labour and birth stories was really helpful and really inspiring. I didn't find all that many videos of quote unquote a natural first time labour. And when I say natural, I really don't intend that to be triggering in any way. I just am referring to having a labour where there was no intervention needed, although there was a slight implication at the end of my placenta, which I will go into. But I thought that it would be a really nice thing to just have out on YouTube for people to be able to access, and again also for me to look back on. So this is not an ASMR style video. You might still enjoy watching it and finding it interesting, but I will strive to upload something a little bit more relaxing as time goes on. So hold that thought on ASMR videos. So I actually did try and film one of these videos a couple of weeks back, but I really did end up waffling and talking so much about tips that I would give throughout pregnancy and how my pregnancy was. So I think really if that's something that you would be interested in and find helpful, I would be happy to do another video on pregnancy. Again, all of the experiences that I had are unique to me, and any advice I would give is just purely off my personal experience, and it's not necessarily medical professional, well, it definitely isn't medical or professional advice. So if you're watching this and are unsure about something, of course, speak to a health professional. So yeah, I spoke a lot about my pregnancy, and I found that I was missing the point of what I wanted this video to be, which is about labour. So I'm going to refer to this book, which if you are watching this and are pregnant, such a lovely book. It's called The Pregnancy Journal, and I love the gold. I really like that, and it just feels like a really special book, and I'm still using it now, I'm still writing in it now, because you have all these sort of prompts, you know, firsts, when I first felt pregnant and in what way, first time dad felt you move, baby shower photos and memories, visualizing your birth, and then it takes you through the different weeks of your pregnancy as well, and you're actually supposed to upload photos, which I did do as time went on, a photo of your bump. You talk about your symptoms, and people are so, it's so right what people say, that it just, you know, it felt like it was an age at the time being pregnant, and it was hard, you know, definitely one of the hardest things I've done, being pregnant. But it, you know, now I look back on it, I'm so glad I documented it because it really did go fast. Now I think back. Don't know if you can see my tummy there. I had a big henna tattoo on my tummy. I loved having that done. That was a couple of weeks before Sully was born. But anyway, just prefacing, you know, saying I think that it is worth getting something like this. And then you also have the first year of baby's life where you add photos and you can write letters to your baby. There's the hospital tag. So I definitely think that it is something worth getting and something lovely that you can reflect upon. When Sully was born, a couple of days afterwards, I typed out my birth story because everybody says you forget the details really quickly. So I literally, it's coming across like I'm a really organised person, but I'm absolutely not. So I'm going to use this for reference, basically. So, where to begin? Well, firstly, I was concerned about the due date being incorrect because I have a very irregular cycle. So let me just check the time. Just want to make sure. Yeah, okay. So I have a very irregular cycle. And I was worried because I was unsure whether the due date was correct or not. And I'd read a lot of books and I had listened to a lot of podcasts, watched a lot of videos, done a lot of research, and I had decided that I did not want to be induced, and everybody has their own decision, but everyone has their own preferences, sorry. But I would definitely advise if you're pregnant, there's a whole lot of stigma around the idea of planning your birth and, you know, looking into it, researching it, because what will be, and, you know, what's the point in planning because it never goes to plan anyway, which is true. But when you research a little bit into what's happening with your body, it empowers you through your birth. So I read a hypnobirthing book, which was amazing, and the whole point of the book was just to talk about what's happening with my body at this stage, what's happening with my body at that stage, and it just enabled me to feel so much more calm throughout the process because I was thinking, okay, I'm feeling like this because this is probably happening. So it was really, really helpful, and I had decided after looking into what an induction actually is that I didn't want one because essentially an induction, and I am not talking from experience because I haven't had one, is where you are taken from one stage of labour very quickly to a later stage, and hence then labour can be a lot more intense because your body hasn't got a chance to get used to one feeling and then another feeling and then it building. For some people it's not a choice. For some people, if you go over that 2-week period, then they are inducing you. I think that's the rules where I am at the minute, but for every country and state it's different. So I was really worrying about my due date because I thought if I go over too much, then I'm going to have to be induced. And it was very interesting as well how induction comes up time and time again with the NHS. And I found that I had an anterior placenta, so I couldn't feel baby's movements as much as other people. I could still feel movements, but not all the time. And I went in actually, I think the day or two before I went into labour, and I was saying, you know, look, I'm struggling to feel the movements, can you just check the heartbeat and that everything's okay? And they were like, yep, everything's okay, but we would just say, why don't you just come in and be induced, because there's no benefit to baby staying in your tummy for any longer, you know, you're 40 weeks. And I thought that was a really strange thing to say, because you have probably heard the phrase baby's going to come when they're ready, and he wasn't ready yet. So I decided to wait, and I thought I'll give it those 2 weeks, do all the things I can do, be active. I have a dog, I'm walking the dog every day, I go swimming, I do a lot of stretching and yoga and Pilates. I was doing a lot with pregnancy. I think it's called Pregnancy and Postpartum TV on YouTube, which was really helpful. I was doing the whole, as I'm sure everyone knows, the raspberry leaf tea. What else was I doing? I was having all the prune juice and all of that kind of stuff. All the things I could do to try and trigger labour. And I definitely would say that the fact that I was active in the lead up, I used the ball every day throughout my whole 3rd trimester. I was active in some way every day. I think that definitely helped. Even though I was uncomfortable, I wasn't going and doing, necessarily a big workout. But the movement was really, really key, I think, and it definitely helped progress my labour, get me to that point where labour happened, and it was actually at 40 weeks plus 2 days. So so I was two days late, essentially, even though that late isn't really the term for it. So I was out at about 11 a.m. and this is funny because this is Wednesday the 28th of February, and Sully was born on Thursday the 29th, so he is a leap year baby, so he's going to be young forever. So about 11 a.m. I went to do a walk with Django, my dog, and I felt good. I've written I felt good. And that morning I had what I thought lost my mucus plug. So I had a lot of discharge, and I thought that's probably my mucus plug. And I also had lots of bowel movements. I can't even remember that already. So I had a lot of bowel movements, and I remember feeling, those little signs that labour was approaching. I was so excited and so happy, and I felt, because I'd done a lot of research into what was to come, I was practicing mindfulness, I was doing lots of, I'd created a lovely playlist. I thought, I can do this. I'd spoken to my partner, I'd asked him, whatever basically I want when we go into the birth centre or hospital, please just kind of support me in whatever I want during this this time. So I felt very empowered, I felt very excited, I felt very happy that morning that things were progressing along. And so I went for a long walk with the dog, and I felt a small trickling, gushing feeling mid-walk, which was funny because I was on the phone to my mum at the time, because I like, when I'm doing a dog walk, sometimes to be on the phone. It's quite a nice thing to do, catch up with my mum. So yeah, it was like a trickling feeling, gushing feeling. I don't know if you've ever felt, when you're on your period, that kind of, sometimes when you stand up, it's like a little bit of a gush, but it wasn't anything dramatic. It was just like a little bit. And I thought, that's interesting. I wonder if that's my waters. But everybody says that it's, you hear on the, from media that it's a bit more of a big thing. And I mean, I had read into it, so I knew that there was so many different ways that your waters can break, and they don't necessarily break at the beginning. They sometimes don't break till way later on in labour. For some people, they don't even break at all. But I had this trickling feeling, and it kept kind of every now and again, just a little bit trickling. And I got home and I spoke to some of my friends, and they had said, yeah, that's your waters. So I rang my partner, I rang Sean, and I was like, I think this is labour. And we were kind of both a bit like, oh, okay, because it didn't feel very dramatic. It just felt, okay, well, this is fine so far. And then I rang the hospital. I was actually due a midwife appointment that day, which was cancelled because the midwife was poorly. So I rang them up and I was like, oh, because I was going to have another midwife see me, and I was like, oh, just so you know, to tell the midwife, I think my waters have gone. And they're like, oh, you need to ring the hospital. So I rang the hospital, and they said, yeah, that sounds like your waters, but come in and we'll have a look. And then the frustrating thing was that from that phone call, it was then time logged, and from that point, this was the fight to say, look, I don't want an induction. I'm going to go into labour, because they want you to progress through labour after your waters have gone, which I totally appreciate. It's for your safety, for the baby's health and safety, but they want, within 24 hours, they want your labour to have got going. So when we went in, we by that point there was a lot more gushing happening, and actually, now I think back, that was probably my waters properly going, because there was a lot. When they checked me, I led on my back, obviously over my legs, and to them to check. So that was probably my waters completely going. And yeah, they said, look, we're going to book an induction for you 24 hours from the date, the time that you called. And if you're not in established labour by then, we're going to induce you. And I was like, okay, fine. But I knew. I was already feeling a little bit crampy. I knew I was going to start having contractions that evening. So that was about 11, 12 o'clock. It would have been, probably about 12 o'clock by the time we were coming back from the hospital after them having checked me over and confirming that it was my waters. So, and Sean had obviously left work to come and drive me to the hospital, so we were both together. And as soon as we got home, I was doing loads of bouncing on the ball, lots of stretching. I had some more raspberry leaf tea, and I was using my friend had given me a breast pump, which is a whole nother story for the future breastfeeding, because that's breast pumps essentially that are medical grade I did not get on with. So, but that's another story. So I because I heard that if you can stimulate your breasts, that can also trigger contractions. So I was doing that, which I'd never used a breast pump before, so that was interesting. And obviously no milk really, although I had hand expressed lots of colostrum in the build up. And then I put at about 7 o'clock, I was getting more obvious pains in my tummy that were coming and going. But to be honest with you, I was very unsure, like, what does a contraction feel like? And, the idea that it's a feeling that comes and then it goes, it was kind of it was a lot more dull at the beginning, and it wasn't as obvious as a wave of intensity that comes and goes. So, but I was definitely, sure that things were getting going. And I had these period cramps that were off and on. I knew that I needed to eat, because everyone says you need to keep your energy up, and I would definitely agree with that. So I had a big dinner. I had spaghetti bolognese. Is that a good dinner to have before having labour? I don't know, but it worked for me. So I had a spaghetti bolognese, and I'm sure I must have had garlic bread as well. So yeah, big dinner, and I wanted to have loads of energy. I was also aware that you don't always feel hungry when you are in labour, so I wanted to make sure I had a big meal, and then at least if I was just having small snacks along the way, that it wouldn't be. I would have that kind of foundation essentially. So we sorted all the bags in the car. Sean was really nervous because he didn't know. we didn't know what to expect. You know, you didn't know how dramatic the whole thing was going to be, whether it was going to be really scary. And he knew he needed to support me, but at this point I was just feeling very, you know, I could cope absolutely fine with the period cramps, and I was just feeling very determined. Like, yep, I've done my research, and I know the feelings that I'm probably going to experience. I know that things can go in so many different directions, but I'm kind of feeling like, bring it on. That's how I'm feeling. And I also got the app where you can time contractions as well. So I did try and rest in bed once I was sure I was having contractions, but they did start getting really strong. So they definitely start to feel a lot like tightenings around your lower tummy. And around, you know, all the way around from front to back, this tightness. And yeah, it was quite intense. And you have to really work, I found, to breathe and relax through it, because your body's that part of your body is tightening, but you're trying to not let the rest of your body tighten with it so that it can progress. Because I think if you keep tensing and tightening up, it prevents you from progressing through your labor. So I was really trying to relax through, but it was not comfortable being in bed, and you know, I wasn't really getting any sleep. So 2-3 a.m. I got up and I had a bath, and because everybody says a bath is a good thing to do, so after about an hour in the bath, my contractions were becoming what I would describe as surges. And yeah, I mean, a lot of people, you know, call them surges because psychologically, you know, it's maybe a contraction has a negative connotation, but for me, contraction does not have a negative connotation, but just the feeling of those contractions, I would describe them more as a surge. It felt like a, you know, there's my dog. So that's how I would describe the feeling of a contraction. It was very much like a surge. So I was using the Freya app at this point now to time the contractions, but they were, you know, it was like this tightening, and they were still manageable. I was practicing my breathing, working to relax the rest of my body as much as possible, to relax my pelvic floor as much as possible, and I was staying calm. I was even using affirmations, which, to be honest with you, when I've read about hypnobirthing, there's so much focus on affirmations, but for me, I didn't really do too much work around affirmations through my pregnancy, though I did have these incredible cards that were for my pregnancy, that I lifted a card every day, and it said things like, you know, my baby is safe and healthy, and all of those things. But I did use affirmations in this moment, and the ones that I liked, I wrote, were, each surge brings me closer to my baby, and also, these surges cannot be stronger than me because they are me. And I love that one. And so then I got out the bath, I went on the birthing ball, I did lots of stretching and bouncing, and the contractions were getting more and more powerful. And I rang the labour ward, because obviously at this point I know I'm in labour, and I just wanted them to know that I'm not going to need an induction because I'm in labour. You know, I'm having regular contractions, they're amping up, you know, every hour they're getting more intense, and so I just wanted to let them know, look, you can go ahead and cancel that induction, but they were still set that if I almost wasn't in the birth centre or having the baby in active labour, which I believe is when you're 4 centimetres dilated, by 12:30 that afternoon. So we'd gone from Wednesday, we're moving through to the next morning now. So they wanted me to basically have progressed massively by 12:30. So my one, it's not a regret, but going back, I think probably I shouldn't have called the hospital straight away when I felt that trickling sensation. I should have waited for that full gush of my waters before, because again, it just set this kind of timer and pressure on my labour. So I was so determined at this point, because I was thinking, well, no, I don't need an induction. I'm in labour. You don't need to induce me because I'm in labour. So, I appreciate if nothing had happened, then absolutely, 24 hours having my waters gone and then nothing happening, then yes. But I knew I was going to meet my baby soon. So I rang the birth centre then to let them know the situation, and I spoke about, am I going to be able to use the pool, and do I need to bring a birth ball with me? And they assured me that I would be able to use the pool, that they had a ball, but I did get mixed messages from them. Obviously at this point I was timing my contractions, and you're supposed to go in when your contractions are 2 minutes apart, and I know from talking to, from doing the NCT class and speaking to people, listening to things, that the midwife is kind of listening to you to see if it sounds like you're in active labour or not. But everybody reacts to labour differently, and I very much went, quite calm, quite focused, quite quiet. I wasn't very erratic. So I think I didn't fit the brief when I rang up. It didn't sound like I was in active labour, but I was, because I was timing, and I was, the criteria for how close together my surges were, for how long they were. When I rang the birth centre, one person said, come in earlier, so that, just to ensure I don't have, end up, that at the hospital don't end up pushing me to get to be induced. And someone else said, stay home for as long as you can. And so me and Sean were like, look, it's me and you and little baby, and we're just prepared for for it to be a bit of a nightmare, basically, when we go in. So we're just being prepared for that, and we're going to stay in our zone, and we're going to advocate for what we want with this labour. So just move the dog out of the way. So we were preparing for that, and I knew at this point, okay, we need to go, because it's going to get... People say you just know when to go in, and you do. There's a point where I think, okay, my surges are so close together, they're really intense now. I think it's time to go in and see where I'm at with my labour, and get set up in the birth centre. You want to have that safe space set up so you can relax into it. And I was relaxed at home, but I wanted to be in the place where I was going to give birth. Yeah, it was the early hours of the morning, and I laboured. Oh, okay. So at this point, I laboured a little bit longer after the phone calls. I laboured for a couple more hours at home. I tried having some snacks, and stupidly, I had a Lucozade and an orange, which made me feel sick. And my contractions were on average 2 to 3 minutes apart, sometimes a little bit longer. But the app was telling me I was in active labour, and I also wanted to be at the birth centre and start settling in. So we left at 9 a.m. I couldn't talk on the phone. Sean told them I was coming in, and then when we were leaving the house, I said I felt sick, and as we were walking downstairs, I vomited on the floor. It was bright orange from all the Lucozade and oranges. And then, yeah, we drove to the hospital. The journey wasn't as bad as what everyone says it was going to be. For me, I thought it was going to be absolute hell, but I kept really focused. I kept breathing through the contractions, and it was quite a smooth journey. And we were 10-15 minutes takes us to get there, so not far. But you've got in your mouth. 1 minute, I think the dog's got something in his mouth. The thing with the hospital, which is so mean, is so the birth centre is to the side of the hospital, so you have to walk through the hospital to get to it. And yeah, the thing with getting to the birth centre is you have to walk such a long way. So Sean dropped me off outside the front. I walked into reception, so I didn't have to walk too far. You know, I didn't have to walk from a parking space. And when I got to reception, the lady was asking me if I was okay. I told her I was in labour. She stood with me while I waited for Sean, because I didn't want to like lose him along the way. And yeah, she helped us to get in the lift as a priority. She was kind of saying, you know, she's in labour. I was just very focused and in the zone, but I was a bit like stressed at this point, because it is intense. These surges, you kind of having to, you want to be still. You don't want to be standing up and moving around, and you want to focus through those surges, but you're trying to focus on getting to the birth centre. So it's very intense. So as soon as we actually made it to the birth centre, I started crying because I was so overwhelmed from the journey. And as soon as the midwife, who was just amazing, she was called Tara, took us to the room, we just felt so much better. The room was lovely. It was really homely. It was like warm lighting. There was bean bags. There was candles. They were fake candles, but it was just a lovely setup. And Tara checked my cervix, and which was painful, but I wanted her to. You know, I was aware from reading books and doing my research that I can decline a check, but I wanted her to check as well. So I was nearly 4 centimetres dilated. So she said, yep, stay, and just, I'm going to leave you here. You can, you know, there's alarm, you know, that I can press a buzzer if I need her, but she was basically going to come back and check on me in 4 hours. But we instantly liked her, connected with her. She was right up our street as a personality. And I was also, you know, that overwhelmed feeling. I did cry again when she checked my cervix, because I have heard stories of people going in and then being sent home because they're maybe only 2 centimetres dilated, and this whole kind of back and forth thing. You know, I was worried that that was going to be me. So yeah, we told her about the induction, you know, the fact that they were saying essentially, you know, they wanted me to have an induction still, you know, by 12:30 if the baby wasn't born. But she said, you know, don't worry about that. You're obviously in labour, you know, that me and her are going to work together. And as you know, as long as I'm in established labour, the baby sounding okay on the monitor, then there's no reason for me to need an induction. So I said, you know, I'll listen to you, your advice. If there's any worries or concerns, then I'm happy to have intervention. But, you know, right now I just feel I don't need it. You know, I was very in tune with my body at this point. So yeah, so she left us to it. The room we were in at the start did not have a pool, but she said that we would be able to move into the room which was next door with the pool a bit later, because I think they were just cleaning in there or something. But yeah, she said ring the alarm, the bell if we need her, but otherwise she'd be back to check in 4 hours to see how we were getting on. And I've written here from what she was saying about how they expect dilation to progress. They would want me to be about 10 centimetres dilated by 6 p.m. And it was about 10 a.m. at that point in the morning. So I knew it was going to be a long road ahead. But obviously as well, it gave me an idea of, because I know some people's labours don't progress. And then again, that's when intervention has to kick in. So, you know, it was just, I just knew that I still felt very focused and very determined, and yeah. So over the next 4 hours, I laboured in the room with Sean, and we had a speaker. I had my lovely music playing that I had set up a playlist, and it was just the right music. It wasn't anything. It was very much like background music. I was quiet, I was focused, and it did get really intense. You know, the contractions were so close together. It's very tiring. You know, you're kind of catching your breath between these contractions, and you have to really focus to relax your body as much as possible, because your body is tightening, or that area of your body is tightening. So you have to kind of do everything in your body to relax it and try and relax your pelvic floor and all of those things. But I pretty much was silent for the whole time. I was quiet, I was focused, and I had to really think about my affirmations, really work on relaxing my pelvic floor. Sean put the TENS machine on me, which, to be honest, at the beginning I wasn't sure of, because I thought, what's this doing? It's kind of buzzing on my back, and how is this going to help me? But it really, as time went on, it was the one tool that I did use as pain relief, and it worked for me, in a sense that I don't really know why it worked, but as labour got more intense, it was definitely a really useful tool. And I left it on me, so as the contractions increased, and I did try moving around at first for those 4 hours that we were in the room, but I got so tired. It's really tired. I know what they mean now when they say that labour is like a marathon, so I was getting really tired. I ended up lying on my side in one of the beds with loads of cushions propped up around me, and I allowed myself to rest because I knew it was a long road ahead of me, and I needed to try and store up energy. So, especially because as time had gone on now, I wasn't able to eat much, so I hadn't had anything really since the spaghetti bolognese. So I forced myself to eat a couple of biscuits and a snack bar. Sean had a nap on the beanbag. I'd made it we'd spoken before, and I said, something that would be really difficult for me is if I was going through labour, and even though it's such a long-winded process and not all of it is, well, none of it really is. For me, the experience wasn't dramatic, but some of it is very long and very slow. And I said to Sean, I just cannot have you looking at your phone, and we're both very good with our phones, but obviously if you're going to be sat there for a whole, so that was one stipulation, and he was amazing, so he was very much so in it with me. And when I was kind of in and out of dozing on the bed, he had a nap on the beanbag. And overall those first 4 hours were very calm and controlled. I was focused, I was in the zone, and toward the 4th hour, I found that I was wanting to sit on the toilet, as it really helped me to relax my pelvic floor, and I was starting to feel a lot more pressure around my bum. And then when Tara came back and checked me, I was 7 centimetres dilated, and she was sort of saying, she knew I'd be a dark horse, which, she was obviously just saying it to make me feel good, but it really did, make me feel like very strong, very empowered, like that I was just there kind of quietly breathing my way through it all. And it did actually make me cry when she said that, so my emotions were very heightened. And yeah, Tara was so amazing. Her and Sean were chatting, and she had a good sense of humour, but at the same time, her and Sean were kind of chatting away. And then when I had a contraction, I just let them know, and they were silent. And it was, again, a very empowering place to be, just to kind of feel like I had command of my body, of the space and the people around me. I felt like I was completely in charge, and it was because Sean and Tara were allowing me to feel like that, because I'm not really a very dominant person in my everyday life. So that was amazing. Definitely having the right people around you when you're in labour is important. So we were starting to get everything ready to go to the pool. So I was really excited about that. And Tara was setting all the candles up in this beautiful room. It was so amazing. And she was warming, filling the pool up, which is very deep, so it took ages to set up. And she asked if we wanted to use a birthing stool where I could sit and relax my pelvic floor, because at the beginning, your contractions are very much so just this tightening, and then it does change to this kind of downward pressure, which is, yeah, it's a very different feeling. So you just want, it feels like you need to do a big poo basically, but along with those tightenings. So I sat on this stool, and then there's space on the stool for your partner to sit behind you. So Sean sat behind me and he gave me a little massage. And we put the lovely music on again, and I sat on the stool, which I was excited to, so that was really nice. I sat on the stool and was having these contractions, and I was starting to actually get the feeling as the pool was filling up that I was wanting to push. So it's a very weird experience, because when you get to that stage of labour, it's not a case of, oh, I feel like I want to push. Your body just starts doing it. It starts pushing you without you even being in control of it. And you have to, like I was saying to you about the tightenings and having to relax your body through the tightenings, it's even more of a challenge to relax through this downward pushing sensation that's kind of overwhelming your body. It's a bit like the convulsion feeling when you're being sick, but obviously it's a downward feeling. So the pool, so Sean was massaging, I'm just reading the thing. So as he was massaging my shoulders, I said to him in the end, could you just kind of just gently stroke, because I think that the feeling of just gentle touch was kind of almost a nice distraction from where I was at. And yes, when I told Tara that I was feeling this downward pressure, she said it sounded like I was transitioning. And for now, just to try and breathe through the change and not to actively push. So like I was saying, there was this kind of pushing feeling that was happening automatically to my body. But along with that, I could have sort of bared down and, pushed myself. And she was saying, don't do that just yet, whilst this transition's happening. And so, she had also asked if I wanted to use the gas and air, and I declined that, because I just think it would have, especially where I'd been that sick at the very beginning, I can feel sick quite easily, so I didn't think, oh, that sounds like a nice idea, so I didn't want that. So the TENS machine was the biggest use to me. And the breathing and the trying to relax my body as much as possible. So the pool was ready, and it had lights in, which was really nice. And I got in, and it was just lovely. It was so warm. I felt like, ooh, I'm getting in the pool. It was just so cool. It was so nice. I felt really happy just being in the pool. It felt right, I put here. And it was just a few minutes after being in the pool that I really felt those contractions step up a notch, and the downward sensations just were taking over my body, and it was an unstoppable urge to push. And Tara at this point was with us at all times, and she advised me to just go with my body, and if I can't control the urge to push, just go for it and push. And I ended up kind of like forward leaning on the side of the pool, so on my knees, with my arms kind of resting on the side of the bath, and Sean was in front of me, stroking my arms. So he was kind of now in front, kind of like facing me, and we barely spoke, because you can't, although there's a break between contractions and this downward feeling, I was tired, and, that was the hardest part, really, how tired I got. And, but I just knew he was there for me, and it was just a really amazing feeling that he was just like, he had my back, and he went and got a cool flannel and put it on my forehead between contractions. He gave me sips of Lucozade for energy, because Tara had mentioned, like, as I was getting tired, she was saying, maybe some Lucozade, have you got something like that with you? she was really calm. Tara was so calm. She helped me with each contraction, guiding me with my breath, and I thought I was going to be asked to have my cervix checked regularly, but it was just that one time at the beginning. So I felt like me and her had a very good connection and a deep sense of trust between each other. And she said, we don't need to check if you're 10 centimetres. From the time of me moving into that room with the pool and then getting into the pool, she said, you've obviously progressed to 10 centimetres and you're ready to go. So she said things like, go with the pushing sensation and then take a little breath and see if you can push some more. So obviously your body convulses into this downward pressure and you're kind of trying to push as well. And then she was saying, after that feeling has gone, keep pushing. So take a little breath and even more. So that was really helpful. You know, I'd heard things of, you know, just breathe your baby out, kind of just let your body, those convulsions just happen, but breathe. But for me, the feeling to push was there, and I wanted to go with it. That was what my body was telling me to do, so I pushed. And I'd done a little bit of perineal massage, and you know, but I knew that the majority of people do tear, and I was just kind of like, that is, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen, you know. And so I was pushing and I was doing these extra pushes. Again, I was tired. And we both, let's just get rid of that. Yeah, so she was telling me to try and push a little bit more at the end of each contraction. She told me how well I was doing and that his head would be coming soon, and we both asked if he had hair, but she couldn't see yet. And I was getting tired, but I kept telling myself, I can do this, and I'm going to go for it with each contraction. Every time it comes around, I'm just going to give it my best. And eventually his head emerged. She said he's got loads of dark brown hair, which was amazing. And we knew he was going to have loads of hair because both me and my partner had loads of hair when we were born. And yeah, Tara said, you're going to feel a stinging sensation, but lean into it, push into it. So that was obviously where, you know, the head, which is the hardest part apparently to birth, is coming through, and it's quite stingy. So I leant into it, and eventually Sully's head was born. And me and Sean had always joked about people who go and look at the head like, oh, you know, it's going to ruin your view of your partner forever. But we were so in the moment together, and he was like, oh, I have to go and see the head. And Tara, bless her, she was like, well, only with Jazz's permission. And I just thought that was very empowering. You know, I felt very, you know, in control of everything. And of course I said yes. And I think Tara had like a little mirror shining, so Sean could see under the water. So yeah, he went round, and he said he started crying, and he was like, oh, he's so beautiful. And Tara said that this is going to be the easiest part now. But it was so weird because he was wriggling around. I could feel that his head was there. I reached down and felt his head, and it was really like weird because I could feel him moving. He was really jerky movements. But yeah, she said that if I want to, you know, I can birth my baby, I can catch him and I can bring him up and from under the water. So there was another lady at this point in the room, but I didn't really take much notice of her. I think they maybe have to have another person present as the baby's born. So yeah, I pushed again, and he came all the way out, and I reached down, I got him, you know, because I was on hands and knees. So I reached down, I got him, I pulled him forward, and I could see him in the water. And I was crying, I was saying, oh my God. He was so beautiful, and his hair was just floating in the water. The cord was very, very loosely around his neck, but the other lady, just whilst I was holding him, just quickly unwrapped it before I pulled him up out and put him on my chest. And then, yeah, Sean ran around to me. We both cried as I hugged Sally to my chest. Sean gave me a big kiss on my forehead, and Tara took loads of photos of us, which was really nice because we were just in a bubble, so we didn't even really notice that that was happening around us. We didn't pose for the photos, and looking back at those photos, they're so magical. For the first little bit, Sully was quiet, but then he really started crying, which was amazing, and we were just in love straight away. Tara had filled the bath with more warm water to keep Sully from getting cold, and he was born at 5:16 p.m. on Thursday the 29th of February. Oops. So I think what I'm going to do is just heard that there's someone at the door, and also my baby has woken up. So there is a little bit more to come regarding my placenta and birthing my placenta. There was a couple of interesting things that happened with that. But that was the beautiful birth that I experienced of my baby, and it was so magical. But I'm going to leave this video here and do another one just about the placenta at another time. But that gives you an idea of the first part of the or the main part of the labour. So yeah, I just managed to fit that in the nick of time, and baby's just woken up now.